Hi, I'm Todd Menge with HK Technologies, and today I'm excited to speak with James Hockey and Kevin Engel from Incodema 3D. Incodema 3D is a leading company in additive manufacturing technology. We are talking with James and Kevin today to learn about their innovative work and how their partnership with HK Technologies has helped streamline their manufacturing process. First up is James Hockey, Director of Business Development with Incodema 3D. James, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having us. Appreciate it.
So I was wondering if you could give us and our audience a little bit of background on what Encodema 3D does. Can you kind of tell us what you do, the industries you serve, and the technologies you specialize in?
Incodema 3D is a contract manufacturer servicing the aerospace and defense sectors of the industry. What makes us unique is that we're using additive manufacturing as our main technology. We build parts that are hard or complicated to build in any other way. But we also utilize traditional technologies like CNC and EDM to finish these parts and get them ready to be attached and put into assemblies and put into use.
And can you talk a little bit about how Encodema 3D leverages both additive and subtractive manufacturing to meet your customers' needs?
So additive manufacturing is generally chosen to build parts that again are hard or possibly impossible to build any other way without a long lead time, without a very complicated procedures of welding and forming and all these other things. We're building parts and generally features in the additive world that then also need the support of standard technologies, or what they call the conventional manufacturing technologies like CNC, EDM, and all these components are generally mated to another component or another assembly, and they need that machined finished area to be able to mate up and bolt on and attach to another component.
Now we're joined by Kevin Engel, Director of Additive Operations for Encodema 3D. Kevin, thank you for joining us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Todd. How about yourself?
Very good, very good. Thank you for joining us. I wanted to talk a little bit about kind of your operations before you got involved with HK. Prior to integrating HK's sieving equipment, how did your team handle the process of the powder sieving and recovery process at your organization?
Yeah, it was very manual before we implemented the HK sieves, and so it was a lot of just scooping the material out of the machines, putting it into the original containers, bringing them into a separate room where we then run them through a sieve process with a lot of manual lifting and a lot of inefficiencies and just a lot of labor driven into the process. And it was a lot of time holding up running machines because we had to get that powder sieved and put back into the machine. So, overall, just a very manual process, time consuming, and, difficult to get through on a day-to-day basis.
With that manual process, what would you say were some of the challenges in terms of like time or cost or that type of thing? Like, just for example, how long was it taking you to do that whole process?
When we were scooping machines out, it would be very common for a large format machine to take several hours to scoop all that powder out. And then you got to go take it to a separate location, run that powder all through the sieves, which was taking several hours. If you had a machine down for that whole time, we really focus on machine uptime. So that was, effectively the opportunity cost was our hourly rate that the machine wasn't running, that we were up against there. We also had sieves without ultrasonic vibration. And so it was very slow going through the sieve screens, and then also a lot of wasted material that wasn't making it through the sieve screen that was actually the appropriate size that should go through.
Wow, it's a lot of manual process, a lot of time there. So at some point, your organization decides to look at other options, and one of the companies you looked at was HK's technology. So can you describe a little bit of what led you to start talking with them and kind of maybe describe the process of evaluating and testing our equipment before making your purchasing decision?
We spent a lot of time going out there and seeing what was available, and we were approached with a lot of solutions that helped with the powder conveying standpoint, where you're not scooping, you're actually sucking the powder out, and then also the sieving. And so the good thing about HK is it delivered both solutions. And there were a couple other companies that offered similar ones, but what we saw with HK is there was some really good value and flexibility. We didn't want to tie ourselves into a product that was from a powder supplier so that it would only work with that specific powder vendor. And then you had to talk to them about making other powders work with them. And so it really drew us to the flexibility with the HK sieves and the ability for your engineers to just sit down and work through a solution with us. That's really what it felt like from the beginning.
And ultimately, you guys did settle on the HK additive material sieving station. And so could you talk a little bit during that process, specifically how the HK team supported you?
Yeah, absolutely. They really came out and wanted to understand what our overall goal was. And so we were able to start that right from pre-quote. We explained exactly what we looked at and then reviewed some drawings, and we're able to focus on exactly what we needed. And they took a lot of our feedback to say, hey, these ground straps are difficult to remove, or we need this size sieve screen, and we need to be able to change it on a day-to-day basis. So we really got good support there. We also wanted to handle reactive materials as well, and so we spent some time figuring out with the HK team what the important components were to have explosion-proof motors, and what the best way is to keep all the powder out of the certain components, so that we had a safe sieve to put in front of our team.
Fantastic. That's great to hear. So, now that you have the additive material sieving station in place and you've been integrating it daily with your operations, what kind of improvements have you seen in efficiency, waste reduction? How has the equipment impacted machine turnover times? And kind of what role has it played in maybe scaling your manufacturing capabilities?
Yeah, it's been huge. So over the last couple of years, we went from something like 15 machines to 35 machines. So we had to do a lot of quick scaling. So this helped out a lot. The first thing is with machine turnovers. You don't get new machines unless the ones you have are running. So limiting that downtime from the several hours we talked about at the beginning to half an hour, we can get a machine cleaned out and back up and running if it's the same material. So really helped out big with keeping the machine uptime going, and also helped with the reduction in material. Like I talked about, we weren't having all that material go through the sieve screens without the ultrasonics. And so what we saw is that it was a 30% reduction in waste material. So that material we were just taking off the top of the sieve screen and sending out for recycling. Now, instead of that, we're using 30% more of that material and actually putting it back into the machines and into parts. So really helped us to combat some of the inflation that we saw. And so we could maintain some of our pricing to customers because we were becoming more efficient in driving that cost down. And then lastly, really helped out with the labor standpoint. Like I said, there were people that were picking these buckets of material up and putting them, over their head, and that to do that on a repeat basis, it's a lot to ask of someone. They're 15 to 20 pounds, so it's not a ton of weight, but when you do that in a repeated motion day in and day out, and to support 35 machines, that's a lot of that. So it really helped out with the safety standpoint of making sure that we're enabling our operators to do things in a safe manner, and not wearing them out with the repeated lifting.
Sounds like a lot of benefits, and I could imagine too for the folks on the floor, much relief not having to lift that over their head 35 times a day. That's great.
Absolutely.
So, just kind of looking ahead, do you see if there's continued opportunities for your organization to work with HK Technologies and maybe other areas of equipment, or to continue to maybe scale up what you're doing
Yeah.
already?
Yeah, we are continuing to scale. So we have an aggressive growth plan that's going to include more machines and more HK sieves to support those machine turnovers. So absolutely, we plan on scaling with HK. We appreciate that flexibility. And there's also been some conversations with the engineering team about some um, increased functionality on the sieves that we could look at in the future. And so to be able to go and have those conversations with the people that are designing the machines is huge for us. And it's going to help us to continue to be more efficient and keep the scale path that we're on to date.
That's great. So, in the end, if you had to summarize the key benefits of working with HK Technologies, what would they be?
Yeah, I think it's it's a short timeline to see the efficiencies. These aren't long ROI plans. It's fairly short, and the flexibility. When we find something that, hey, we agreed to this original drawing, but this is turning out to be a little bit difficult as we manage this on the floor. There's that flexibility where guys send in replacement parts or come out and look at the machines and really drive that into the future products. And so we appreciate that collaboration and that flexibility, and it's just really helping us to scale.
And lastly, what would you say to other manufacturers considering HK Technology sieving solutions?
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely have and will continue to recommend your company for people who are looking for powder conveying materials and sieving. Just the increased efficiency that we've seen, the reasonable capital cost, and the ability to work directly with the engineering team there, all makes it so that they're a good part to supporting the process. So absolutely would recommend.
That's great to hear. Thank you very much. And Kevin, thank you very much for your time today.
Thanks, Todd.